Hey everyone, it is Evan here from the Trade Risk on Wednesday, March 25th. We are intraday right now, and this is our weekly swing trade ideas video where we bring you some of the names from our watch list, stocks that are holding up well, showing some relative strength, and ideally are not yet too extended in their moves. As always, these videos are powered by our partners over at Investors Business Daily. We curate ideas from their stock lists. You can get access to their stock lists with a link in the description of this video. So the markets are rebounding pretty aggressively or getting that follow-through day here today. We've been keeping a close pulse on the market environment. We posted our midweek video yesterday talking about sort of the reversal, the follow-through, the levels to pay attention to, and so far it has been sort of following the script that we've been delivering on in those videos. We are going to talk a little bit more about the S&P 500 here because I do have a couple of ideas on this is trade ideas for this week. But let's first start off with just some of the longer term names, some names that are still working here. So we're going to look at some long ideas that are still kind of holding up, showing some relative strength, and haven't really suffered the damage of the major markets. So ZTO, this is the first one here. This comes from IBD's watch list. And again, you can see that it certainly has had some wide ranges here and some sporadic trading over the past couple of weeks. But notice that even though it got as low as about a 17% pullback from all-time highs, that's certainly better than a market perform. That's a market outperform there. And again, you can see just from a technical perspective, it is still holding up above all major sort of trend lines and really most critical support areas around that $22, $23 area. So ZTO here in the industrial sector and holding up quite well here in this trend and just showing some good relative strength. So that's the first one here. It's certainly pulled back. It's starting to now, again, as you get a little more acute on this potential entry or price action, you can see over the past week or so now it's starting to break over this trend line. It's fading off of the highs. So today might not be the convincing go signal here if you're looking for an entry, but trying to get back above this, or if you want to be a little more patient, you maybe are waiting for more along this 2650 line or the all-time highs around $28. So, the idea here is that, perhaps when the pressure of the market starts to alleviate a bit more, you might have a good market leader here in ZTO. So that's the first name. Number two is DPZ. So this is Domino's Pizza, probably a name we're all familiar with. And this is holding up very nicely here. And again, you can see just really respecting prior support and breakout levels here. You can see this 298, call it 298, 300 level was the resistance for over a year, almost 2 years, starting in mid-2018 all the way to just earlier in this February when it broke out. And you can see we came back and essentially retested this pretty hard. We undercut it, but notice we bounced right back above it. We only got 1 or 2 days of closing underneath this area, and now we're back over that $300 zone. So DPZ here, I like it. It looks good. Technically, it's holding up, showing some good relative strength, trading near highs, and again, on a relative basis here, outperforming the market very nicely. Now, last but not least, from long ideas here, is Microsoft. Microsoft is a name from our watch list. It's also a name from IBD's list. And this is a chart I posted on Twitter yesterday. But, basically, when we look here at Microsoft on a longer term basis, you can see that the pullback, while it has been about 30% or so, or 29%, so pretty much a market perform here in terms of the length or the magnitude of the pullback, we notice that on a longer term basis, it really is just sort of checking back here to long-term support, this long-term sort of accumulation area that took place around the 130s in mid-2019. So as long as that longer-term support stays stays intact, as long as buyers are interested in Microsoft at that area, I think we have a nice floor to trade against. We have some defined risk we can use, and potentially, Microsoft here is going to be in a good position to emerge stronger once all of the uncertainty passes in the broad market. So Microsoft here is the last pick there for trade idea. Now, a couple of other, so the last sort of trade idea here is actually going to be a short trade, and it's something that might not be ready yet, but it's for the broad markets, for just the S&P 500s, for the Dow Jones. It's really pick your index of choice. For those of you who follow along, I don't really, in fact, I don't do any individual shorting of companies. Think it's just pretty hard. Certainly, it can be profitable in this type of environment. So this is the unique time where it certainly does prove useful. But for me, I like to just get the short exposure from shorting individual sectors or just the indices outright. I think it's just a cleaner trade. Correlations are usually really high, and indices, frankly, become in play because there's so much volume. So for me, looking to short this market, if you are interested in getting that short exposure or playing two directional or maybe just hedging, I think you can start to think about it now. Now that we've basically rallied 16% off of the lows. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little more gas in the tank. So if you follow along in the recap videos, the first sort of target of resistance here was last week's highs, and you can see we basically got that today. But the bounce that we were looking for, the first zone of resistance or the spot where we thought could be run into some trouble, was around this 256, and you can see we basically got there and we're starting to pull off now. So it's yet to be seen whether or not we're really going to roll over and stall here. If we do start breaking over 256, then it does open us up to, like we talked about in the video, this closer to this 272 area. So I think you still have to kind of be a little bit patient here, but we're starting to get closer to kind of this general zone where I would expect the market to start to have some trouble. We're kind of touching the lower end of it now, all the way up here, and it's still pretty wide zone. So I would suggest, going down to a smaller time frame chart to, define your entry a little bit better. But this general slot here, I think, makes sense to potentially look at some short exposure here if you're in the position that we're not out of the woods yet, that this turmoil is not over, which I sort of, do sit in that camp right now, just saying that, I don't think we're out of the woods yet, despite the nice 2-day rally that we've seen. But again, shorting is tricky, so you have to be careful here. You have to be a little more experienced, in my opinion, as a trader to be looking to short these markets. But this is generally the zone I'd be looking at. And again, I'd be playing it via, SH, which is just the inverse spider ETF. Obviously, you can short the SPYs outright. You could go, if you really want some more juice, you go to like SPXS, which is a 3x inverse leveraged ETF. This is basically tracking the S&P 500 at a 300% clip. And if you want to look at the Dow, you could look at SDOW, again, a 3x ETF that trades the inverse to the Dow Jones. So that's it. That is sort of the very tactical other trade idea here that I would put out, is just to look for potential short setups now that we've bounced, in my opinion, that 15 to 20% or all the way up to maybe 25% in this market. I think that's a good bounce and a place where the market would start to struggle in that general zone. So that's it. That is the final trade idea there. A couple of long names, a couple of tactical shorts. So hopefully you find something interesting. Hopefully you're navigating this market just fine. And again, you don't have to trade. I'm not doing much trading whatsoever myself here, trying to stay sideline, raise cash, keep that mental capital in check here as a lot of this volatility still remains in the market. So thanks so much, as always, for tuning in every Wednesday. Trade ideas just like this. We'll see you back here on Friday for the market recap video.